So, Chris, what more can you tell us about this terrorist attack in Tel Aviv today?
Well, Ephraim, it took place at a busy area with many restaurants and cafes. The attacker himself came from Morocco, and as we said in our report, he had an American ID. Just after 3 days, he bought a knife, and then he began stabbing Israelis. One of the victims was an IDF soldier who sadly lost his arm fighting in Gaza, and then he was shot by a border police woman. Just one of many terror attacks in the last 15 months or so. And also at the same time it's going on, Ephraim, there's a major operation in Jenin. It's called Operation Iron Wall. It could last for days. It's designed to not only thwart immediate terror attacks, but also maintain IDF freedom of action in Jenin and other places in Judea and Samaria that really are hotbeds for terror activity.
Chris, our president is questioning whether the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas will actually last. Jonathan Tobin agreed. Is that a widespread belief in Israel, and what would happen if the ceasefire does collapse?
Yeah, I think there is a widespread belief within Israel that this deal would collapse. Actually, I think many hope it would collapse because it really does undermine Israel's, efforts to go ahead and defeat Hamas totally. But they do believe, and I would say that many Israelis are divided on what would happen. Many want desperately to see all the hostages come home, but many also, on the other hand, they don't want the war to end without completely defeating Hamas. And those people, many of them are parents and families of those who have fallen in battle in Gaza. They don't want their sacrifice to be in vain. I talked to a resident of one of the kibbutzim on the border with Gaza. She and others, they won't go back until they know that Hamas is completely defeated. So really, for many Israelis, it's a daunting dilemma, and why many believe that prayer is really the only way out of this situation right now.
If we do see a collapse, would that mean the fighting with Hezbollah would start up again?
Well, there were really two separate ceasefires going on, one up in the north and that one with Hezbollah and Lebanon. That expires on January 26th in just a few days. But since the beginning of that ceasefire, the IDF has been operating in southern Lebanon since the beginning. And they're doing that when they see that Hezbollah is violating the ceasefire. There is hope that the new Lebanese president, and he was voted in just a couple of weeks ago, that will bring some sort of semblance of order in southern Lebanon. He's the former chief of staff of the Lebanese army. The hope and actually the prayer is that he will be able to prevent Hezbollah from reemerging in southern Lebanon. So you have two ceasefires going on simultaneously. One, they're up in the northern border. That too is where Israel really hasn't seen a definitive defeat of Hezbollah, and the same going on in Gaza, where Hamas is not completely defeated, and we see in just the last couple of days reemerging from their tunnels and sort of taking control over some parts of Gaza.
We saw in your report the president's nominee for ambassador to the United Nations, Elise Stefanik, and heard her speaking out against U.S. funding for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. Why is that such an important issue for Israel?
Well, for Israel, for example, they banned UNRWA here in Jerusalem, and after October 7th especially, they see UNRWA and Hamas as inseparable. You had UNRWA employees who actually participated in October 7th. The facilities in Gaza were often used by Hamas, and one of the main UNRWA facilities actually had Hamas tunnels underneath that facility. And many employees of UNRWA were also members of Hamas. So all in all, after the last 15 months or so and the more exposure that there's been about UNRWA's relationship with Hamas, there's really no appetite to have UNRWA here in Israel.
Chris Stefanik also said that she believes Israel has a right to the entire area known as the West Bank, which is the biblical lands of Judea and Samaria. How do you think the Israeli government is going to deal with this issue?
Well, I don't think they're going to do anything right now, but there are different views within here in Israel and within the government and the Knesset. Some members of the Knesset believe the way to peace is really declaring sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. Others wouldn't want to go that far. But last year, the Knesset voted against a two-state solution by a large majority, especially after October 7th. They don't see a two-state solution with certainly not Hamas and not either the Palestinian Authority that something would work. One plan that has been presented, and that's by former U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman. He wrote a book called The One Jewish State. He believes that declaring sovereignty over Judea and Samaria would be a win-win for both Israelis and Palestinians. He makes the point that the so-called two-state solution hasn't worked for about 30 years. Groups like Hamas and many people argue part of the Palestinian Authority, really, they want a one-state solution by replacing Israel with the Palestinian state. So really a bit of a division here in ideas about what will happen. But certainly the declaring sovereignty on Judea Samaria is gaining some attention here in Israel.
All right, I thank you so much. Our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief, Chris Mitchell, thank you for your insights as always. And of course, we'll be checking in with you in the days ahead.